The Persona series has been Atlus's flagship franchise for a long time now, dwarfing even the popularity of its parent franchise, Shin Megami Tensei. Its blend of life simulation and RPG mechanics, as well as its penchant for eye-catching aesthetics and irresistibly catchy music, captured even the attention of non-RPG fans, and the release of Persona 5 only rocketed the franchise to greater heights. The series isn't as universally known as game franchises like Mario and Pokemon, but among RPG franchises, it's more than earned its spot near the top. Of course, the majority of the Persona series' acclaim is largely focused on its most recent mainline entries. You know, the ones that actually feature the hybrid of school life and dungeon crawling the games are so known for. However, like most franchises, Persona did not start at 3. There were in fact several games released before the series began implementing its current game-winning formula, the original Persona and the Persona 2 duology. These 3 games did not feature social links, daily calendars, or any of the gameplay elements that have now become synonymous with Persona gameplay. Even so, they still stand as fairly interesting and inventive spins on the Shin Megami Tensei formula, and fans of the game certainly vouch for their quality. Your mileage will vary on whether you enjoy the games yourselves, but at the very least, I do agree that the games have a lot going for them. All that being said, the games are understandably not very well known. They're pretty old to begin with, having come out during the era of the PS1, and aside from some relatively faithful PSP ports, have basically gone untouched by Atlus. This is despite some pretty decent groundswell from fans indicating to Atlus, whether by polls, surveys, or otherwise, that they'd like to see something Persona 1 or 2 related from them sometime soon. Now, ignoring old games in favor of pushing the new hotness isn't something unique to Atlus, and Persona 1 and 2 are far from the only Shin Megami Tensei related games lost to time. But current Atlus looks to be entering its remake era, having released Persona 3 Reload and Raito Remastered in the last 2 years, with Persona 4 Revival coming down the pipeline as well. With all of these remake projects coming out and Persona 6 seemingly a faint glint in the distance, the chance of a remake for these older Persona games seems to be more and more likely. Right? Well, maybe not. At the very least, while Atlus is certainly aware of fan demand for remakes of Persona 1 and 2, they certainly do not plan on answering that demand anytime soon. The reason why is pretty obvious. The majority of Persona fans are more interested in seeing Persona 6 or Persona 4 Revival than they are a remake of a PlayStation game none of them have played. With so many possible projects on the pipeline, if a remake for Persona 1 or 2 is in the cards at all, I can't imagine it's much of a priority for Atlus. Look, the fact is, even if Persona 1 and 2 are technically mainline entries, their gameplay is so different to what Persona is now that they have essentially become a niche within their own franchise, which is in itself a niche. The number of people that have played these games is a small fraction of the overall Persona fanbase, and even those curious about the older games wouldn't necessarily take a remake of them over a new entry. It's a harsh truth, but if you've been a longtime fan of the older Persona games, I doubt you're surprised about it either. To be honest, I have to wonder if a remake is really what we want for the Persona 1 and 2 games anyway. I know I have a penchant for being skeptical of remakes in general, but hear me out for a moment. The fact of the matter is, Persona 1 and 2 are both games that feel very outdated in the modern era, and while it's more than possible for us to get a mostly faithful remake with a few quality of life changes, I think there's more than a decent chance that we'll see some changes that bring the games more in line with modern Persona games. I don't think we'll see a complete revamp with a daily calendar system, mind you, but I'm almost certain we'll see something similar to social links implemented as an example. Think of something along the lines of Soul Hackers 2, and you'll have a better idea of what I'm trying to get at here. You might say that Atlus should have no reason to make such changes to Persona 1 or 2, and that adding modern Persona mechanics wouldn't improve the game's quality or popularity. I agree, but even if that's the case, that doesn't mean that Atlus wouldn't make these additions anyway. If they put out a game, they'll want as many people as possible to play it, including not just the current Persona fanbase, but also potential new players as well. If that means remaking the older games to be more in line with modern entries, I can't count out the possibility they'll do it. Hell, the PSP port of Persona 1 redid the soundtrack to be closer in style to Persona 3 and 4, so it's clear they're not above making changes like that. Still, it's kind of an iffy call to make in general, because to be honest, up until now, Atlus hasn't really done a lot of remakes. We've had a lot of re-releases and updated ports, yes, but when it comes to complete up-down remakes, Persona 3 Reload in 2024 was their first real effort in that avenue. I've talked about this game before, and while it's certainly very faithful to its original, it also has a lot of changes that modernize the game experience for newer Persona fans. With only one real example, although Raito Remastered certainly counts as well in my opinion, it's hard to predict exactly how Atlus would approach a hypothetical remake. I do think Atlus realizes just how much Persona fans attach themselves to the hallmarks of what makes a Persona game Persona, however. The series has a very strong sense of identity and individuality, and for better or for worse, fans of the franchise expect that, not just from Persona games, but from games from Atlus in general. I have, in my mind, a traumatic memory of reading the IGN review of Shin Megami Tensei 5, which certainly had a lot of praise for the newest entry in the long-standing JRPG franchise, but also couldn't stop itself from saying the ridiculous phrase, "Persona without the heart," which in my mind can only come from a Persona fan expecting more of the exact same thing. It's admittedly a statement said offhandedly, but if this is what they say about a Shin Megami Tensei game, what are they going to say about a Persona game that doesn't play like Persona? Now, if you're a newer fan and you're confused about why modernizing games that are more than 2 decades old would be considered a bad thing to anyone not wearing rose-tinted glasses, it's important to understand that for all of its jank and outdatedness, these games did have their own identity, one that was able to draw a fan base all of their own. By changing them to be more in line with modern games, you can end up destroying that very identity, and the game you get in the end might not even be all that good in the first place. It's for all these reasons that I would rather just see a port of the games to modern platforms, rather than a full remake. It would certainly take a lot less time and resources on Atlus's behalf, and while the games would not necessarily be appealing to modern fans, at least they'd be accessible. However, Atlus hasn't really made any moves to port the games either, and it's probably because of that lack of appeal. Porting might not cost them a lot, but the early Persona games are not likely to sell crazy big numbers, even at a sharp discount. No, it's not a good reason to not put out a port, but Atlus has recently been putting out hit after hit, and they don't want to stop that streak anytime soon. All of this is to say that even if Atlus says they want to do something with Persona 1 and 2, I think it's pretty obvious that they're in no hurry to do anything about it. It's a shame, because even if I don't exactly hold the same love for these games that their fans do, I still think they should definitely be available in some form or another, even if it's just a port. The games are old, for sure, but they've got their own style of gameplay that can be just as compelling as the ones in modern entries. Fusion spells in Persona 2, for example, were a lot of fun to mess around with, and while the negotiation system is certainly obtuse, once you got a handle on it, there was a lot of fun to be had. That being said, I don't want to act like a good Persona 1 or 2 remake is impossible. Atlus isn't in the habit of making terrible games, and even in the worst case scenario, a completely modernized remake of Persona 1 and 2 would still be pretty playable, even if hardcore fans of the games would rather die than play such a thing. I have to say though, that as long as these games are available to play, that'd be good enough for me, whether it be a remake or just a port. These games deserve to be available to a modern audience, even if they won't ever be as popular as their successors. Still, what do you guys think? Do you think the Persona 1 and 2 games need to be remade, or should a port be more than enough? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to catch what I've got coming up next. This was a video from Square One, and thanks for watching.